you to everyone who's joining us tonight. I'm Jo Phillips, Joe Out Loud, and I'm live tonight with Mike Thibeau.
I am me. Yes. And you know what? Honestly, thank you so much for having me and for encouraging me to come on board with you. I'm very blessed to be here. So thank you.
Yeah, so you're Mouthful of Thibeau on
Yes.
Twitter.
Yeah.
And we were just in our pre-banter, we were just talking about 10 years ago, 7 years ago. You and I wouldn't have been friends 7 years ago, 10
Probably
years
not.
ago.
No.
No, because I was trail running and bike riding, and you were having picnics on your
Yeah.
bike ride.
No. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm excited to have you because as you know, I'm a lot about personal growth and advocacy and stuff like that. And holy man, you are so committed to growth. And oh, my cat apparently is going to join us. His
There
name
we
is
go.
Stan, if he happens to pop in.
What up, Stan?
Oh, he's so helpful. So I'm really glad to have you. So Joe Out Loud is about storytelling. I think that everyone has a story to tell. Everyone has something to teach, and everyone has something to learn. And we don't need to be celebrities in order to be impactful. And so I'm just going to call you a regular person. Don't get that tattooed or anything like that.
Regular guy. Yeah.
I think that's probably the only time you'll be called that. Hey, you're just a regular person.
Yeah. I'm just a regular dude.
Yeah. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just going to use a random number generator, and it's gonna pull up an age, and that is the age that we're gonna talk about. And then in the last 15 minutes, we'll talk about whatever it is you want to talk about.
Sure.
All right.
Yeah.
And maybe some Bon Jovi.
And maybe so.
All right.
Isn't that what you want to talk about, though, Joe?
But it's my show, Mike.
I guess.
All right.
Yeah.
What are we? Oh, 28. Can you see that?
28. Okay. I was
Mike
still married at
Thibeau
28.
At 28. Oh, wow. This is going to be.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine you at 28. How long was your hair?
A little bit shaggier than this, maybe.
Okay.
I was still down in Medicine Hat. Yes. Yes, I was.
All right. So you were living in Medicine Hat. What were you doing?
So that's where I started my radio career, or I should say that's where I started being paid for very, very little for my radio career. So I would have been doing probably music director and afternoons on My 96 in Medicine Hat, which is a top 40 station down there. And I also would have been working for the Medicine Hat Tigers. And so
28, that would have been late 90s, early 2000s. Early 2000s.
Yes. Yeah. Because I'm 42. So that was 14 years ago. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So after
so top 40 in those days.
Oh God.
How'd you feel about the music, Mike?
It was awful. It was Christina Aguilera. It was the Backstreet Boys. It was when you look at that, the early 2000s, right? So this is 14 years ago. Yeah, that would have been 2006. Ish, right? Yeah. So wow, that's crazy. So 2006. So big event in that year. Would have been 06, 07. We would have went to the Memorial Cup. So yes, so we were there. It was awesome. And that one would have been in Vancouver, if I'm not mistaken. So 04, so 03, 04, I went to the Memorial Cup in Kelowna with the Tigers. And then in 06, 07, then we went to Vancouver for the Memorial Cup. So I would have been, just coming off of an amazing season by the Tigers, one of the best Western Conference final or finals, dubbed finals against the Giants. And then we would have been out in Vancouver, which would have mean, honestly, Joe, that was really at the cusp of when I was transitioning from Medicine Hat to Red Deer.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely.
At
Yeah.
28.
Because right after the Memorial Cup is when I moved up here to take the job doing mornings on 106.7 The Drive.
And what led to that? Like you, Joe says a lot of Medicine Hat
I love it.
Tigers talk here.
Cheers, buddy.
We're gonna ask lots more questions about Medicine Hat just for
Yeah.
Joe. What actually led to your, so you enjoyed Medicine Hat. You talk about it all the time.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, you loved living there. What about the job? Did you love the job, or what led to moving to Red Deer?
Yeah, so the job was great. Like I did enjoy being on the air. I was doing what I absolutely wanted to do since I was a little kid. Like I remember walking around with a Fisher Price little recorder set with like a tape deck and a microphone, and I was pretending that I was Knowlton Nash. Like way back in the day, and so I would interview people and all that stuff, and so then like I was doing absolutely what I love to do, but my best friend Chris Savage was already in Red Deer. He had already moved, and he was doing the morning show on 106.7 The Drive. So it was an opportunity to do rock radio, which is right up my alley, and do the morning show, which is the best paid job in radio. And I didn't see a downside of leaving the Medicine Hat area and coming back to Red Deer, because I grew up around here all the time, when I was a kid, and so I knew the area really, really well. And yeah, so I moved immediately following my trek out to Vancouver. Yeah.
And was that hard, like to leave the Tigers?
It really was
a factor?
Yeah. And you know what, honestly, and it was hard to leave Medicine Hat. I still have quite a few great friends down there. But it was in radio a lot of the time it's like transitioning from one place to another to another to another. And so that was a perfect time for me to transition to a little bit of a bigger market, but doing rock radio. So absolutely, it was a tough decision a little bit, but yeah, it was one that I couldn't say no to. Yeah.
And no room to be a game night host here in Red Deer?
No, for some reason.
No, for some reason.
Yeah, and I wouldn't want to have done it anyways. The Rebels. Yeah.
Right. Oh man, you'd get kicked out for wearing orange all the time.
Yeah. There'd been a couple of times.
So at 28, like think back, 14 years ago, what was your biggest dream? Like what was the pinnacle of what you could imagine for yourself?
Probably continuing to do radio, and then at some point maybe moving out to Montreal and doing radio out in Montreal, and then hopefully getting like media passes and stuff to go to all of the Habs games. That was probably like at the pinnacle of what I had hoped. Yeah.
And why Montreal?
It's amazing. Like there's so much. It's honestly the most cosmopolitan city in Canada. It's absolutely gorgeous for anyone that hasn't gone to Montreal. It's like the Vegas of Canada. And like Vegas is garish and cheap, and Montreal is storied and just the culture there. So when I say that Montreal is the Vegas of Canada, it's because if you can't have fun in Vegas, you're dead. Same thing in Montreal. If you can't have fun in Montreal, you're dead. So like
Yeah.
there's something to do for everyone. The food, the music, the architecture, like I went a couple years back for my 41st. So this was last year, actually. I went, treated myself, and I went out there for my birthday to a Habs game. And, just walking around downtown, I heard 6 or 7 different languages. And I had scouted out because I hadn't had a really I hadn't had Iranian food, like really out here. And so I had put that on my bucket list. So like before I flew into Montreal, I knew exactly where I was staying. And within 4 blocks, there was probably 20 different restaurants of all ethnicities, which is absolutely amazing. And I have always loved exploring other cultures and exploring their food, except for seafood. And so that, like, it's amazing. And then of course I'm a huge Habs fan. But then like there's the Just for Laughs festival out there. There's the Jazz Festival. There's F1 racing. I mean, it's incredible city. Yeah.
Yeah. I fully agree with you. Where did you stay when you were in Montreal? Just this is off topic, but where'd you stay?
So I just literally steps from my favorite Irish pub out there, Hurley's Irish Pub, which is right downtown, and which also happens to be like a block and a half from Centre Bell, so the Bell Center. So I mean, it just made total sense, and I absolutely love Hurley's. It's just such a great Irish pub, and you drink at the Wood, and it's amazing. Yeah.
Whitbread and I may have sat up to a few of those pubs.
Right?
Completely agree with you
It
about
is
Montreal.
such an amazing city. Yeah.
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 Yeah. So what was your how did you imagine yourself at 28? Like did your idea of yourself actually line up with your physical like actuality of who you were? Did you have this idea of who you wanted to be? Like how did you imagine yourself to be at 28?
I imagine myself. That's a great question. Because I'm definitely not the person I am today that I was at 28. So I was a lot more hard-headed back then. I wasn't as, and I thought and this is not to say that I didn't think highly of myself back at 28, because I think I've always been a person that has been empathetic and cares about others. But I was definitely a lot more hard-headed back then. This was pre-dad as well. So there was a whole bunch of, and there has been a whole bunch of growth since then. And honestly, it's one of the oldest cliches, but you really don't know. Like when you hold your child for the first time, like your whole entire life up until that moment has been very, very selfish, right? And you're always about yourself, because you could do anything you wanted at any point, but then once you hold your child for the first time in your hands, what should happen is that should be the transitional shift of, okay, life as a selfish entity of myself has now shifted, and now I'm going to do everything that I can for my son or daughter, right? Or like, so it's 28 was before a lot of growth. Yeah.
I think that all of us would say that about before kids and after kids. A
I
lot
would
of
hope,
us.
right?
Yeah. Not all of us, but a lot of
Not,
us. Yeah.
yeah, because I think honestly, still for some parents, like, I don't know. I guess it's interesting what characteristics you find that you attune to when you get older, um, more so than when you're younger. So at 28, I wasn't really paying attention to those that were parents, right? And how they were, and how how they acted as parents. Whether or not they were drinking all the time or whatever. I mean, but now I'm very attuned to that, and how we're raising our kids to be, hopefully be better people than we are in the future, right? And so because they're the ones that are going to carry on from where we are, and I don't think that 28-year-old would be having this conversation.
Yeah.
No.
I also wonder, and we're not going to bring up that journey, but I wonder if without your journey through parenthood, because it's so precious to you, if you would be as attuned, had you had an easy journey through all of that. So
No, and that's very fair. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
because when it becomes precious, then we just really, we care so much more, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And not take it for granted, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because so many parents, they get through, like all of a sudden their kid's 16 and they realize like time's up, and they took all of that. They forgot to have it be precious. And time's up and it's over, but they didn't just hold it really close to their heart through all of it because they were just getting through it, right? So
Yeah.
that's sometimes just such a gift to have when there's challenge through it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's finding a positive in all of the negative, right? Which is extremely important.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So my next question, did you love yourself at 28?
I think I did. I don't know if there's I don't know if on and I don't want to sound egotistical, but I don't know if there's been a time where I hated myself. Um, yeah, I don't think so, because honestly, like, I've done a lot of and I've been a part of a lot of really um sought after things, right? Like I've had a pretty blessed life in that regard, like with what I was able to do. Like a lot of people really want to, or they look up to, or they admire, people that are on the radio, people that are working with sports organizations, people that get to go to concerts, people that get to travel, people that get to like see a lot of things and do a lot of that stuff that was part and parcel of doing that, right? So and I was in a pretty sweet spot. Like I said, I had a great job in Medicine Hat. I had great friends, great coworkers. I was married. Um, I like life was really good, and so I didn't see anything wrong with myself at 28. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. My daughter actually asked me about a month ago. I was getting ready for work, and she said something about like, "What did you do to feel so good about yourself?" And I said, like every day, like literally every day since I was 16, I look in the mirror and tell myself I'm awesome. Like I've done that for years, every single
Mm-hmm.
day. So I can totally relate. Like there hasn't been a point where I haven't loved myself because I was fortunate enough to have some guidance through that at a pivotal point in my life, right? As a teenage girl. So
True. Yeah.
you
And
mentioned some really cool
yeah, go ahead.
you mentioned some really cool things that you've done, like concerts, because like in radio, you actually get to meet
Oh yeah.
All of these people that, like, I can't tell you how many people, and I knew that Bon Jovi was going to come up, but the number of people who are like, yeah, I've met Bon Jovi, I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bon Jovi's not one of the
So
artists that
like
I've met.
what was
One of
good.
so one of the coolest things, and regardless of what you think of the band, okay, but I had a connection with Nickelback because I was married to a woman whose stepfather taught them in school in Hannah. So when I went backstage to meet the band and do all the meet and greets and have all of our listeners in to like a listener party, and they got to come back and do like a meet and greet, pictures and chat and all that stuff, and I was facilitating all of that. And then after that I also had a chance, and it was originally I think supposed to be like a 5-minute interview, and that 5 minutes turned into the better part of almost an hour. And we were just sitting backstage shooting the shit, having a couple of beers, and then one of them was like, "Oh hey, like, sorry, we're gonna have to cut this short because we got to jump on stage." And I'm like, "Yeah, no, that's been awesome." Like, so that was one of the coolest moments. But then, like, hanging out and having a few beers with Jeff Martin from the Tea Party till the wee hours of the morning, getting flown out to Kelowna for a houseboat party, which with just a small band called the Sled Dogs. They're out from BC, but they actually flew us in from Medicine Hat, and it was a very intimate. They played on a houseboat on the lake, and it was just amazing. Like I've had a lot of incredible experiences, and I did take it for granted because I didn't think that radio was going to end, and but I made sure to enjoy it while I was experiencing it. So to the point where but also I wanted to remember it. So I mean, I would enjoy it only so much because I wanted to make sure that I remembered it for years later. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's like I think that's actually an important lesson to that a lot of us as we get older, it took us a while to learn to not just enjoy it, but not consider it normal, right? Like to understand how lucky you are, how cool it is,
Yeah.
how cool it was that you got to do it, and not and just kind of look around and be like, none of these people will ever have these experiences I've had. Like
No.
how, right?
Yeah. And that's the thing.
Yeah.
And if you can remind yourself of that, to be present in the moment and enjoy it with others. Like if you happen to be introducing them to this moment, like soak it in, try to soak it in from their eyes as well, right? Because this is like a lot of the times with
Yeah.
concerts and concert tickets and behind the back, like backstage and all that stuff, like they would never be able to do it again, right? So yeah.
Yeah. Yep. All right. So this is a question I'm reluctant to answer because your best friend at 28 was Chris Savage.
Yes. Yes.
But who influenced you at 28, Mike?
So yeah, so that was a good influence. Mm. My boss in Medicine Hat was a strong influence, Jay Hitchin, and he continues to be a strong influence. Not and it's one of those things where as you go through life, you don't necessarily have to be in contact with a person all the time. And oh, you're cutting up there. Are we back?
Are you there?
Oh, I see you. There we go. Okay.
I can hear you, but your screen is frozen. There you go.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we're good.
There we go. So it's one of those, I was saying, it's one of those things where you meet people in your life and you don't have to constantly be in contact with them, you know, and for them to be influences in your life. So Jay, my old boss, was an influence. I had some great friends and coworkers in the Tigers organization that were influencers as well. Yeah, it was all very, you know, within the circles which I ran. Yeah.
And I know you're a big reader now. Were you a big reader back then?
Yeah, I've always been a big reader. Not to the point where I am now, though. You know, I would read 4 or 5 books a year. Back then, I think, you know, or I would read a lot of, you know, newspaper articles and that stuff. But like I'd always want to challenge my way of thinking or investigate things. I've always been like someone who wants to like seek knowledge in that. So, but nowhere near where I am today. Yeah. I just hit 70 books.
So you weren't
this year.
learning Russian at 28?
I wasn't learning Russian at 28. No. Yeah.
All right. As you know, I'm a big proponent of owning your shit.
Yep.
And not pretending that we're perfect all the time, and learning from our mistakes, owning our mistakes, apologizing for our mistakes, and moving through them. At 28, can you tell us about a situation where you were the bad guy and what you've learned from that now that you're older?
To be honest, probably in fighting with my now ex-wife, I've calmed down quite a bit. And I've always had like a quick wit. And I think back then I would have thought that I would win an argument if I was to not necessarily tear the person down, but just kind of run in circles around them. Just because I could talk a mile a minute and blah, 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 right? And so it would have been like, honestly, to own my shit, it would have been how I treated my ex in, especially when we got into arguments. Yeah, big time. Yeah.
What lessons did you carry forward from that time in your life?
Like specifically from 28, or like just with?
Yeah, from 28. Yeah, from that, like that kind of period. What lessons did you? I know we've kind of talked about a lot of them so far, like you know, like parenting is precious, things like that. Are there any lessons that you learned in that time that even now at 42 you're like, man, I'm glad I learned that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been something that I've been working on since, like, let's say since 28, is how to act within like a relationship. You know, I've learned to work on making sure that I'm listening and seeing how the other person is feeling, because a lot of time, because I have a big voice, right, and I'm a big guy, like I'm 6'3" and I'm 220 pounds, and so my voice carries. Like that's what I did for a living, is like I enunciated and I broadcast my voice. So I know more so now because I have a gorgeous young woman who is very attuned to that. So I've really got to watch what or how I say things, just the level of my voice and all that. And I had an ex-girlfriend who was also very, very what's the word I'm looking for? Attuned to that, like very sensitive. And so like and those were lessons that I am still learning to, today. Because there are times where you might like, you need to get your message across and you need to let them know how serious you are. But yeah, yeah.
So,
The
and that
loudest
kind of
one
brings
doesn't
us.
always win.
No, but
No.
the loudest one is definitely the one that's heard the most.
Yeah, or tuned out.
I always joke at work because it's me and 3 former radio personalities in the office.
Yeah, you've got your set
Yeah,
out for you.
it does occasionally get loud with the 3 of you. So,
Mm-hmm.
so that moves us into today because so I've only really known you probably for about 6 months,
Yeah.
because we've kind of been in periphery and all of that stuff. One of the things that just astounded me and really has led to so many great conversations is how much work you do to look at your place in the world and how it impacts others and what you can do. I mean, you and I have talked about this so many times, what you can do as a straight white man to make things better for so many people. So what actually, and I've never asked you this, what led to that? How did you become this guy that like easily could be identified as a feminist?
I honestly, I have to give a lot of kudos to my ex-girlfriend, Alex. She really helped me work on my my volume, but she also called me on my shit, and we've remained tremendously good friends. And because I've learned a lot from her, and I continue to learn a lot from her in because honestly, like she had some great ideas of how to make the most of my time with my daughter, and it wasn't there wasn't any because I had my daughter so few times, but it never felt like when I had Je t'aime that it was like a detriment, or Alex never had a problem with that. And so like I learned a really solid lesson in that. But honestly, like I see a tremendous change in myself in those years, because I was going through a lot of stuff with um, with access, with the court appearances, with lawyers, with all of that, and that's all plural, lawyers, and so I had to have a point where I could trust that there was something that I could hold my hat on and be like, and it's in finding those positive times during negative situations. And so yeah, she helped me out with a lot of that. Yeah.
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 Because you don't really, I mean, you're raising a daughter, right?
Mhm.
So to take those experiences and just be angry and sit in that anger doesn't actually help you raise a daughter to live in a world that isn't exactly the most fair for her, right?
Absolutely not.
Um,
Yeah. No, like it's and that's the thing. Like, so, to go to, when I started the Man Up group, um, which was a support group for guys going through divorce, separation, custodial access, and all that stuff. One of the biggest things that I made sure that was my focus, was that there wasn't going to be any negativity, right? Like it wasn't going to be any language of, you know, that bitch, blah, blah, blah. That didn't fly at all, because that wasn't teaching, that wasn't good, number one, to hang on to that much hurt or that much hate. But it also wasn't good because most of the guys that were in the group and stuff had children. And so it's in trying to co-parent or trying to be as facilitating with the other parent as possible. And you're not going to get that with holding on to that hate, right? Or that hurt. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. You just can't do anything about the other parent, right?
No.
See, all you can do is manage how you, right? How
Yep.
you proceed, and you can't do anything about the other side. So just letting it go and making sure that you're the best parent possible for your kid, and that they know how much you love them, and how you're proceeding in front of them.
Well,
Because they definitely pick up on the belittling and stuff like that, right?
Oh, absolutely. And the thing is, and if you're going to be putting them in the middle of things, that's not a good place for them. And then when they get to be old enough to make a decision of who am I going to spend time with, well, guess who they're going to spend time with? They're going to spend time with the person that's not full of anger and hatred and resentment and all of these things, right? So, like, you want to be, if your time is limited already, then you want to make the most of that time, and you want to make sure that you're doing as best as you can to transition through all of that as well. But show them that, yes, even though there are hard feelings there, that you can still treat the other person with respect, because they're half of you and half of them. So if you're showing hatred or anger or all of these things, they're going to feel that to their core, because they're half of them. So yeah, no,
Yeah,
yeah,
to their core. Yeah,
to their core.
Yep, they carry it as a piece of them. Yeah, yeah. So back in May, when the Black Lives Matter movement started, I see you wearing your shirt.
Yes.
Because I'm very much like you, where I want to create change and I want to really do work on myself. I'm always working on myself, not because I'm a bad person, but because I always think I can do better.
We all
and
can.
So I put out a message that said, I'm going to read this book. I'm going to undo my white supremacy, or I'm going to at least try. I'm going to acknowledge that it exists. I'm going to acknowledge that all of us as white people are racist, whether we believe it or not, and that racism isn't anchored in hatred, but more anchored in our privilege. And I'm going to investigate this. And so I put out a message, and you were like, I think you were the first one on board to jump in on that. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
What has that journey been like for you?
It's been incredible, because we learned so much, and we did, like, I think we were pushing 3+ months on that book. By the way,
it's supposed to be 4 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, really, it started, and I don't know if any of us expected it to only go the 4 weeks, but yeah, the book, I'm just looking at the space here in Joe where we had our very first meeting and sitting around that table, and you just recollect on how that went. But yeah, it was going to be for around a month, and then we pushed it well past 3. So the book is Me and White Supremacy by Layla Saif, I believe is how you pronounce her last name. And that's a book that holds you accountable, right? So that's a book that that holds you to your shit and calls you out, like, and makes you call yourself out on it, which I truly appreciated, because like you, I'm always trying to learn more. One of the most frustrating things that I find is that people, read a blog snippet about this big on whatever medium it is, Facebook or whatever, and then they think that they have a formulated thought on how the world is going, and it's absolutely ludicrous. And to think that because I read one book or two books or three books that I know, absolutely not. Like this is going to be, and this was the thing, Joe, that I really appreciated. It wasn't a set it and forget it, right? Like once we're done working through it, it's not like, oh, well, that was just one of the 50 books that I read in 2020. No, it's one of these things where you consistently, or like myself and yourself, consistently am going to work through it, because we're not perfect, and we're going to mess up, and we're going to stumble, and we're going to fall. But it's in just being aware of how much of our reality, our everyday reality, has been set up this way for white people to gain in every facet. And that was absolutely fascinating to me. And it's been one of those things where, you really have to think of, because there are times in your life where you purge people from your life that are no longer there alongside you for the journey. They were there and they supported you, but you've grown into different people, and they're not there with you on the next journey. And that happens throughout your whole time. And very seldom do you hang on to friends for 40, 50 years. So is this one of those defining times where, if you're not in alignment with these particular views, like so if you don't think that Black lives matter, if you don't think that women's lives matter, or if you don't think that people of color's lives matter as much as your life matters, then I'm sorry, but we're not going to align. And I'm like, we're not going to go on a journey together, because you're just going to, that's energy that I'm going to expend, and it's not going to get me anything back. So it's been an eye-opener. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm still working my way through the book, and I will be working my way through the book from now on.
Well, and that's it, is that this is a lifetime commitment to doing what we can and being willing to screw up, right? I know that we came into those meetings. They actually start again next week if anyone's interested in joining us.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
But we came in so many different states of mind. We came in broken. We came in enraged. We came in hopeless, frustrated, like all of those feelings, guilty. We just really leaned into the feelings. We talked a lot about echo chambers and creating our echo chambers, and fear and silence, and so many pieces of it that I don't think that once you've spent some time looking at it, I don't think that you really have a choice to stop looking at it. Like that's a deliberate choice to lean back into a system that's built to keep other people down.
Absolutely. And that's the thing is once you have done the research, and once that you have done research into yourself, where you're at, I like, it doesn't make any sense to me how you could go, no, everything's fine. Like, at all. And so, like when I bought this shirt, like I came down the stairs, and my daughter, who's 12, sitting in the living room, just beamed, and she's like, I love that shirt. And I'm like, it's pretty cool, isn't it? And she's like, yes, it is. And like, that's like, this is who I want to, like, this is what I want her raised in, is, you know, to be, and she's a very empathetic and compassionate young woman. But that's who I want her to be. And I want to see her have a very strong, you know, advocate of these things that she can learn from, and that we can both learn together, right? Like, so this weekend, I watched the other night on CNN, I watched Ruth Bader Ginsburg documentary.
Oh.
I know, right? And so
Why'd
this,
you have to bring that up, Mike?
yeah. So this weekend, and here's, okay, so at 28, if you were to tell me that I was going to watch a documentary on Ruth Bader Ginsburg, okay, and then follow that up with, on the 27th, a documentary on John Lewis. If you would have told me that at 28, there was no way. There was no way. And it's not to say that I was, you know, not a good person, but I'm not the person who I am today at 42. Yeah. So, and those are two documentaries that I'm going to watch with Shatem to show her, number one, an incredible woman of who can be a role model for her. I've already looked into Ruth Bader Ginsburg Notorious RBG t-shirts for her. So awesome. I'm going to surprise her with one of those, or an I Dissent one. So that, and then with John Lewis as well, right? Like, I want to educate her on what it is to be a good citizen, and that's to be a good person to everybody, right? Because, and I'm going to only bring this up because, well, I know we're not necessarily on the clock for an hour, but you said, like, this is stuff that, you know, where I'm at today. So you and I both have a past that we had grown up in religious homes, and we're not going to get onto a huge thing here, but I just
that's a whole other segment.
I know that's a 4-part series,
and it requires more wine than I have.
Yeah, but really, if you look at just the foundation of the religion that I was raised in, or the religion that you were very similar. So every person has value, and it's unfortunate, but a lot of those that beat their chests and profess the loudest do not inherently believe that.
Yeah.
And so, and in reading that book, and in reading other books, and I've read some fantastic books on the indigenous. I've read, like, I've challenged myself, Joe, for specifically in the last couple of years, to read more female authors, to read more authors of color, and to read more books that, you know, break out of my safety net. And you always go back, and you always, right? Like, we all have those that are, you know, as soon as you crack them, that's your safety. That's your, I know what I'm getting out of this, and I like what I'm getting out of
completely okay too.
And that is because you need it, right? You need a break. You need to restore your energy. So yeah, I've challenged myself to read more, to get a better understanding and to get a better perception, because I can't profess to know what it is to be a woman. I can't profess to know what it is to be a Black man, right? So how do I gain that understanding? Is in reading about it by those people, to get a fair peek at just what it is to go through life in their shoes, right?
Yeah.
So
I think like, that's a good point for me to say, that I'm actually doing a JoOutLIVE on Thanksgiving, but I invited somebody from the Urban Aboriginal Voices to be the guest that day, because I
That's
think that's such an important day for them to have a voice.
absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to that. So if you're interested in this conversation, definitely join me on Thanksgiving Day, because if we're looking for a real perspective without having the whiteness put over it, then I think it's going to be a really great interview that day.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to note that in our group, we had two teenage girls
Yes.
in that group, and holy, like they dropped the mic on us so many times.
Yeah.
Like they were just the perspective of the youth today. These guys, they're game changers. Like they're full of rage, but rather than sitting and dwelling in it, they're like, we're gonna do something about this.
It was amazing to see, and and that's the thing. Maybe not big surprise, but I was the only male in the group,
Yeah.
which is unfortunate. It really is. And I've thought a lot of that too.
Well,
But
let's
but to go back to
yeah, can we actually, like, I would
yeah.
love to talk about that, because I would like to clip this out and use it. It's so rare. It shouldn't be rare, but it's so rare to have a guy like you doing the work and talking about the work. A lot of guys are doing it, but they just won't talk about it.
Hmm.
And I mean, I know like Joe was watching earlier, I've seen him really step out in the last couple weeks in like highlighting, especially for queer kids and things like that. But why do you think that why do you think that women are so much more comfortable with speaking out for others and guys are so reluctant to do so? White guys specifically.
Yeah, yeah. That's a really good question. I honestly wish that I knew the answer. Honestly, I mean, I've had lots of fantastic discussions with Joe
Mm-hmm.
uh, about a lot of a lot of more difficult topics, and guys seem to like I don't know, like we weren't as guys we weren't like the social circles that I ran in. We weren't raised to read. We weren't raised to be good students, really. Like
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't a, oh, at least Steve's a good student. Like, no, like that, it really, so we weren't rewarded for it. And then if we were doing it, we were, that wasn't masculine. So it's not masculine to read. It's
Mm-hmm.
not masculine to talk about your mental health. It's not
Mm-hmm.
masculine to talk about how you're really, really struggling with someone or something, because you're perceived, the perception is that you're weak. And so, and for the longest time, and I mean, if like throughout history, weak men got owned. Weak men didn't make the decisions. Weak men got pushed around. And so, yeah, like I don't think it was ever really rewarded like that. And it's not to say that those types of behavior should be rewarded, but it just like I don't even know a guy that reads. Like I know one guy that reads. That's it.
Yeah, I know one guy that reads too, and it's you. Like that's
Like
it. I don't know. And reading is actually so big. It actually is a big part of this because it does offer you a lot of different perspectives. I think that also guys have more of a pack mentality. Like you never stray from the pack. You don't want to stand out.
hmm,
Like you've just really been indoctrinated in that from the very beginning. Boys will be boys. Look at them stand together.
yeah.
They have each other's backs. All of that stuff. And so it really is, unfortunately, and in my opinion, stupidly, an act of bravery to not go along with the guys on
Oh
something.
yeah. Yeah. And you know what, like now more than ever, right? With so much misinformation or disinformation out there, and you have primarily men that are sitting in power still, for the most part. This is when you want people to be educated. This is when you want people to be knowledgeable about what's going on. This is when you would want people to acknowledge it. And the one thing that I have a tough time with is a lot of, well, and I guess a lot of people don't want to undertake some things because they know that it's going to take work. So because they already know that they're okay, yeah, I could, but it's easy. So it's easier to just not do it. It's easier not to read. It's easier not to, right? And so, and not everybody's a reader.
Well, because
but
there's no consequences. Like there's no consequence
no,
to
because
just
you're
sitting in the comfort.
no, because it doesn't impact you on a day-to-day basis. And that's what is unfortunate, because if it did, there would be a lot of people that would be doing the work and doing the homework and reading and figuring out and fighting and to get their fair shake or whatever, right? So
Yeah.
if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Joe says it's never been cool to be intelligent, kind, or compassionate for men.
No.
And like when I hear that, I just think and totally not of a judgment of Joe in that comment. I just think what a privilege it is to use cool as your measure for whether you're going to do these things.
Oh yeah,
Because
because
right?
because the cool kids, like, they basically got away with all their shitty behavior,
Right.
and so you wanted to emulate them,
Yeah.
and right, like,
But
yeah.
for everyone, for a lot of people, the measure, so for cool to be the reason why you don't do it versus for women to not do it means consequences for our daughters. For a black mom to not do it means a consequence for her black son. Like there's for an indigenous mom to not do it is a consequence for her and for her family. So for cool to be the consequence is like such a like to me such a frivolous consequence.
Mhm.
Like give up your coolness because there are people whose actual lives are impacted
Are
by
dependent on
stuff.
it.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, like, if I was to go back in the recesses of my brain and look at who were the most rewarded or most intelligent people in my school, there would be one or two guys, right? Like in the 95 to 97 percentile. And then most of the others were women. Most of the others were girls, right? Like in junior high and high school. So there'd be like the two nerds, the two uncool kids, guys, and then it would be all women, because yeah, like, it wasn't cool to read. It wasn't cool to do your homework. It was, right, like, so and so, like, younger, that's all you're really concerned about is, how does this look? And if you learn it when you're young, well, you're going to most likely continue that throughout your life, right? Like, so if it wasn't cool to uh to be educated, or if it wasn't cool to do those things, well, then what's the point in you bucking up? Because I know guys that continued that through through university, and it wasn't
Oh,
cool to
totally.
finish university, so you flunk out, and you get blasted every Tuesday, and you don't go to school, and so you flash out like halfway through, but who gives a shit,
Yep.
right?
Well, and we support it in having this culture of boys will be boys and the boys in the back, and I'm going out with the boys, and like there's just no, like it's a very easy place for men to stay because we allow it, right? Like it's that's how the culture is built, to allow the least amount of responsibility to be held by the people with the most power, which is
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just want to make this really clear. This is not a trashing men. This is a,
No.
what can we do to get men to understand that they need to be using their voice to help this change?
Well, and that's the thing, because I'm a very proud man. I'm a proud male. But in saying that, and like and that's the thing, like I call people out on their shitty behavior. So if that's a guy, I'll call you out on your shitty behavior. If you're a woman and you're just hating on men, and it's not getting you anywhere, like you had a fantastic quote 2 weeks ago, Joe. You're working through this book called Rage Becomes Her.
Mm.
And so you had said it's okay to be angry, and you can absolutely be proud to be a woman, but it's not okay. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the quote was, "It's not okay to be an angry woman."
Yeah.
Right.
It's, yeah, it's in recognizing, I mean, like if we go back to the notorious RBG, she said, to be angry and to dissent, but do it in a way that leads others.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so there's that component to it. And the guilt, I mean, that's one thing in working through this book about with white supremacy that I could really relate, and I did many times, to the experience of women, has been a lifelong project for me as a feminist, in relating to, all of a sudden I realized what it might feel like to be a white man, because the guilt that might come with it, or refusing to feel guilt, excuse me, and the necessity of not feeling guilty but making the change.
Yeah. And like one thing that because really, if you go at it, okay, so if you ultimately, if what you want to do, okay, is encourage people to come along with you, or explore their own journey, okay, on how to be a better person, uh, you're going to get a lot more respect, and you're going to get a lot more people joining you on that, if you don't do it from a judgmental point of view. So as RBG has said, like, do it in a way that encourages others to come along.
Yeah.
Right. So here's what we're doing. If you are interested in it, come along. There's no judgment here. But if you come across it, because this is very in your face, but it only says those 3 words. It doesn't say, like, I'm still looking at, like, I don't think it says more on the tag, right? But so many people take it as such, and they're dealing with their white fragility, which we could go into a lot more things. But
Yes.
yeah, like, it's you're going to learn a lot more if you investigate, if you read up on things, and if you're willing to relearn some things. Because right, because if you think that, no, I learned this back in the day, like, no, right, you're
Undo it.
undo it. And that's the thing, like, 28 to 42, it's only 14 years, but I've learned so much in that 14 years, and I'm hoping I don't have the same lessons to learn from 42 to 50, right? Or 54, or whatever it is. I'm
Oh,
not
you
good at math.
will. We will.
But yeah, so if you're willing to do that, you will be richly rewarded, and others around you will be richly rewarded.
And it will make our world better.
It will.
Yeah.
Because this is right.
Yes.
This is right. This is being on the right side of history. It truly is.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Mike, as you know, like you and I could just keep talking. I just so enjoy our conversations. You make me think, you challenge me, you bring insight and thoughtfulness every single time. So we should probably wrap up.
Well, and I wanted to say,
Yeah.
so when I was, because this stuck out to me. So when I was talking or retweeting or promoting this on Facebook, there were three things that I mentioned you as, okay, and that's resilient, intelligent, and compassionate, and those are three. What's the word I'm looking for? Attributes that I just absolutely love about you, but that are extremely important. Like when you're looking for characteristics of a person, like you can't go wrong with resilient, with intelligent, and with compassionate. So yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. I actually have this journal that I keep, and it's very colorful. And those were actually two of those words were the words of how I wanted to define myself last year, resilient and compassionate. So it's a very, very deliberate, almost, it won't surprise you that almost everything I do is deliberate in the energy I bring. And it's awesome
Yep.
that,
Well,
awesome that you see
it's
that.
shining through.
Thank you. Thank you. That's awesome. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you. What a great conversation. And it didn't go as off the rails as I thought it might be. I don't want to know what age it is that we don't want to talk about, but I'm pretty sure there's one of them.
I love the generator. That's a fantastic idea. So like any age between 15 and how old you are now.
Yeah.
And then there'll be stories and all that. Like that's a great way to do it, right? Yeah, because most people would just want to talk about right now, right? Because that's what's fresh. That's
Yeah.
that's what they're
And it's
impacted.
what they're passionate about right now.
Yeah.
And yeah, and we always get to that. So yeah. Next week we're having Deanna Harder, who actually knew Joe Whitbread from way back in the day, which is totally weird because Deanna and I met on Twitter. And
Yeah.
Deanna is a personal trainer and she can do pull-ups like nobody's business. But she's badass and straightforward and straight to the point. So Deanna's on next week, and then I'll announce the October schedule later this week as well. So lots of cool stuff happening.
I had a question. Okay, so since I'm and especially being a noob on the program,
Okay.
But how many men have you talked to?
Three. Yeah. So I had Alan Pusey on, who is a musician, and actually, ironically, with Alan, it was just a couple weeks ago. He is just freshly going through a separation after a long time marriage, and the age that we chose to talk about through the generator was right now, and so it's a really, really cool conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so he's on there, and then I also spoke with Jamie Ingram, who talked with me about his journey through alcoholism and recovery and martial arts and being a good husband, and so two really, really great conversations. It's
and
unusual that guys, and then you.
Yeah.
It is unusual to get guys to volunteer, but I do have Paul O'Neill coming up in October.
Oh, Paul?
Yeah, Paul's coming on.
Yeah.
And then it's a whole bunch of women, but they're all really kick ass. So, but yeah, I love it. Anytime a guy says, "Yeah, I want to come on," because I think it's so important for people to see guys being vulnerable and honest. And so I love it when they say they're going to come on.
Absolutely, and to maybe give our company some props is like all the things that we're doing with kids And, you know, we primarily see more involvement with the mums, but if the dads could be, and I know that this is something that Joe is really, really passionate about, if we could have the dads interacting on TikTok, or the dads interacting on Snapchat, or the dads interacting with, right, like, and showing some interest and validating their kids and stuff like that's
Yep.
it's so important, and I hope that more guys can do that, and more guys
Yep.
can show that they can be vulnerable, because it's
Yep.
not weak.
Oh, it's not weak, and it's not an act of bravery. It's just like, to bring your real self is just so beneficial to every single person out there. So, yeah. So again, thank you. We've got some great comments, Mike, if you want to go in and read them. Thank you, Tori. Thank you, Joe.
Yes,
And it's just been a pleasure. So I'll
thank
see
you.
you tomorrow morning in the office.
Absolutely.
But yeah, thanks for the great conversation, Mike.
Thank you.
We're out.